If you go for an extra large or a jumbo, look at the price of these. I don't believe this myself, but $1,199 for one of these. That's just crazy to me. I think I did it again. I found another trending woodworking project that's selling really well right now, and I think you guys are really gonna like this one. It's a new spin on an existing piece of furniture that I think most people already have in their house. It's a little bit more of a challenging build than I normally do on my channel, but I think it's gonna be really fun. And I think it's a great woodworking project to do whether you're a DIYer, a beginning woodworker, or a novice woodworker, because you can tweak it depending on your skill level. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. Let's get to building. Okay, so here's what I'm talking about. If you put in floating nightstands on Etsy, you can see these things are starting to become popular. There's a bunch of best sellers on here, and you can see some of the prices they're going for. $255 for this one. It's just basically a drawer with a box with a drawer in it. Here's another one going for $318. Another one going for $174. Here's another one going for $428. And then if you look at some of these, like this one's going for $428. This is unbelievable. It's in 8 carts right now. That means 8 people have this in their cart right now, deciding on whether to buy it. If you go for an extra large or a jumbo, look at the price of these. I don't believe this myself. But $1,199 for one of these. That's just crazy to me. And as you can see, it's just basically an end table that hangs on the wall. Look at the sizes on these. This is 16 by 12 by 10, and they're selling it for $600 basically. So then you can look, these guys are offering free shipping. So you figure if it costs $100 to ship this thing, you're still making $500 off of it. Let me show you this one other thing. Who looked that up? Babe, are you on my computer? Sorry, I don't know where that came from. This one's a bestseller. As you can see, it's had 20 plus views in the last 24 hours. And this is the style I'm going to try to build, because this looks like it was made out of regular wood, out of some pine, and just stained. Right up my alley. I'm going to try this one. And I know this one's only going for $174, but that's for the small one. If you go to the medium sized, it's going for $216. If you sell them in sets, they're selling it for $379 for a set of 2. Stupid geese. So let me show you. Let's get to building. So the nightstand top is going to be 26 inches wide by 14 inches deep. So I'm going to build it by attaching 2 1x10s together. Now my top's finish dimension is going to be 26 inches, but I want to cut these boards at 28 inches so I have some room to play with. And now I know that 28 inches is the maximum I can cut without having to open my garage door. The depth of my nightstand top is 14 inches, so I could have did that with 2 2x8s, but they're about only 7¼ inches, so it wouldn't have gave me much room to play with. And as you can see, I have a gap between the 2 1x10s when I put them together, so I want to use my straight edge jig on my table saw and clean this up. I have a video if anybody's interested on how to make this straight edge jig, and I'll link it in the description, and I'll also try to link it right here on the video if I remember. I found a flaw with my straight edge board. I flushed the 2 sides up against the fence to make it nice and square, but now look, my knob hits the fence, so I have to move it up some. Not a big deal. I just put my level in there to make a space between the 2 fences. So you can see the gap I have in the center. So I'm touching on the 2 edges, but there's a bow like this because there's a bit of a gap in the center. So the point of this is, if I would have ran this just straight up against my fence, it would have followed that curve in the board, and this side would be curved. So this way you put it up against this, your straight edge jig, and now I have one straight edge that I can run up against the fence and cut off that other bowed side. So then I just repeated that whole process on the second board. So by the time I was done, I had 2 boards that were squared on both sides. All right, guys, moment of truth. Let's see if my jig worked. Let's see how these come together. Ready? Bam! Look at that. I'm like a real wannabe amateur woodworker's slow assistant. I can't believe it. Look at that. Then I repeated that whole process again for the bottom shelf. They're almost the same size. The bottom shelf is 3/4 inch smaller, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to cut it down to the final dimension after I have it all put together. Let's see if I'm 2 for 2 on these boards. Maybe these will go together just as good. You ready? Yes! I'm a real woodworker. I'm a real woodworker. Like, kinda, but slower. Okay, so I got my top boards and my shelf boards cut. They're all square. Everything's ready to go. Now I just gotta join them together. I'm gonna join them together using this biscuit joiner. So now I'm marking my pieces and I'm making lines so I can line them back up. Then you line up the biscuit joiner with that line. And when you push in, a blade comes out of the biscuit joiner. You make a groove on both sides, put a biscuit in there when you glue it up, and then it holds it together. It keeps it straight. For some reason, the first one I did almost stopped the motor. I don't know what happened. It started smoking and everything. I don't know if it was that knot that's in there, but after that, it worked good. Now, I know what you're thinking. How does this guy have a face like Brad Pitt and a body like John Candy? But more likely you're thinking, well, what if I don't have a biscuit joiner? What am I supposed to do? Well, the cheapest method is you could probably just glue these together and it would be fine. It's not that big of a surface. Or you could use a dowel jig like this. These are less than $10. If you get a kit with the dowels and the drill bits and everything, it's like 21 bucks. I'll leave a link in the description if you guys are interested. You could use a pocket hole jig. Pocket hole jigs can be more expensive than the biscuit joiner, depending on which pocket hole jig you get and which biscuit joiner you get. Like Wen's got a biscuit joiner that's about 50 bucks, maybe 51 bucks, something like that on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. Now, you don't need a biscuit joiner. They're not as versatile as a pocket hole jig. They're like a poor man's domino, a really poor man's domino, because they're like a 5% the cost of a domino. And they're not as versatile. They're not as versatile as a pocket hole jig either. But I like using it when it comes to these little glue ups like this when you're putting panels together. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What's the best thing you guys like to use for putting panels together? Once I got my boards all glued up, I'm using these 2x4s as caws. They're bowed already. They're just bowed naturally. And I'm going to use these to hold it down, so when I put force squeezing them together, they don't bow up. This is going to be the top part of my floating end table. The overall dimensions are going to be 26 inches wide by 14 inches this way, by 14 inches deep. I made this little diagram to help you guys visualize it a little bit better. The blue part is the top we just made, the two boards we glued together. And then the green part is a 1x6 that you're going to use to make the cavity of the drawer cavity. So here's the dimensions of the drawer cavity, if you want to pause the video and write this down. Now, I said 1x6 in all the dimensions, but it's actually because I built it from a 1x6. That's not the actual dimensions of the wood. What's most important is the lengths. So I'm going to assemble this with pocket holes. I'm going to have 2 pocket holes in the back that are going to go into the side, and then I'm going to have pocket holes going down that way into the top. I guess they would be up when the top is on, but I'm going to assemble them with the top on the bench and then screw them down this way into the... That wasn't me. That was my geese. I have geese in the backyard, and sometimes they make noises. Sorry about that.
This guy is good.
Now for the drawer, I'll give you those dimensions when I get to it, but I have drawer guides left over from another project I did, and I'm gonna use these drawer guides for my drawer. If you don't, drawer guides can get expensive. I normally buy them in a larger set, so that way I have some when I have other projects coming up. But if I was gonna make these to sell, I would probably do the drawer guides out of wood. Then I would use a paste wax to make sure they slide smoothly. Right now, while I'm waiting for my top to dry, I'm just putting the pocket hole screws into all my drawer cavity wood. I'm a little bit nervous and excited to see how these tops came out. I put the drawer cavity on top of it just to check everything out and make sure everything's gonna line up when I do my final cut on my top. As you can see, it's a little bit wider and longer than the drawer cavity right now. I'm gonna use these 90-degree clamps to keep it in square. The actual pressure is gonna be from a clamp, but I like to keep these on so it doesn't go out of square when I'm screwing it together. Then I realized I forgot to put glue, so I have to take it all back apart and put glue. Someone said in my comments a few videos ago that I make a lot of misogynist jokes in my videos, and I don't feel like I make any misogynist jokes. They said they can't even watch my channel in front of their wife because I'm making misogynist jokes. What do you guys think? Have you guys heard me say a misogynist joke on my channel? I feel like if you massage people for a living, there's nothing funny about that. I don't think it's a joke. Why would I make fun of people that give massages? It doesn't even make sense. Stupid geese. Once I had the drawer cavity completed, I used it to transfer the dimensions to the nightstand top. Then I had to spend 20 minutes transforming my garage so I could use my table saw. Hashtag small workshop. I made this crosscut sled in another video, the same one I did the straight edge jig. I'll link it in the description if you guys want to check it out. But I'm using it to cut off the edges and square them up. And I have to say, I'm really glad I made these jigs. I feel like they're a tool that really upgraded my woodworking game. Another good thing about this project is with the scrap wood, you can make karate sticks. Come on, Joe Rogan, come on. Sorry if I scared anybody with that. So after 20 minutes to put my saw away, and then another 15 minutes to play with the sticks that I made, it was time to sand all these pieces down. I started with 80 grit, and then I worked my way up or down, however you want to say that, to 120 grit. They had these Sand Net Diablo sanding discs on clearance at Home Depot a few months ago, so I decided to try them out. And they're pretty cool. They're like a net. You don't have holes in them. It's like a net. So it's a smoother sanding experience. But I felt like the 80 grit wasn't as gritty, wasn't as powerful, didn't take off as much material as my regular 80 grit did. But the lower one seemed to work pretty good. I mean, I don't know if you guys want to check them out. They were on clearance. I don't know if people don't like them, but that was my experience. Then I took a 1/2 inch round over bit and I rounded over some of the edges. I rounded over the tabletop, I rounded over the drawer face, and I rounded over the bottom shelf just on the front and the two sides. You don't want to round over the back of it. I really should have sanded before I routed that. I don't know if you can see that. There was something on my router base that scratched this all the way around on one side. I don't feel anything on there, but somehow left a scratch. Did a little bit up here and then again down this side. So now I got to resand it. Figured out what gouged my wood. You see that? I dropped this a few months ago and it must have dinged that corner. That's why only one side was leaving a gouge. Just that little nub right there, but the soft pine, can you see it? I'm trying to get it to focus. Can you see that? That's the culprit right there. So after I resanded everything, it was time to attach my drawer cavity sides and back to the nightstand top. I didn't want to clamp this thing right to my bench because I always have like little boogers of glue or little pieces of sawdust or something that scratches the top. So what I did was everywhere there's a clamp, I put one of my bench cookies under it. So I'm clamping it to my workbench with a bench cookie in between to support it so it doesn't bow right there. Then I just flipped it to do that last side. You can see a gap where my two boards come together because they were cupped a little bit. So I'm just gonna squirt some wood glue in there and try to clamp it shut, see if it stays.
He's a hack.
Okay, so now that I got my top built, I'm gonna build a drawer that's gonna go in there. Just the drawer box. This is the drawer face already done. And that's gonna be the top of my nightstand or end table, whatever you wanna call it. Okay, so I'm measuring for my drawer and I always show the mistakes. So I wanna make sure I show a win. I think it's a win anyways. If you measure from one side to the other, it's exactly 26 inches. And then when you go to the back, it's almost exactly, it's like a 30-second off from front to back. I can live with that. To me, I'm using construction wood, so I think that's pretty good. And I know why it's off a little bit. This upper corner kind of bows out like this. So, and I attribute that all to the miter sled and the straight edge jig that I built because it helped me get this top perfectly square and perfectly even. Much more than I would have done before with just the table saw. So, and like I said earlier, I'll put a link in the description to that video so you can build one yourself if you want, because they really helped me on this project. Okay, so now I got to make the drawer that's going to fit in here. And I'm going to make the drawer 1 inch smaller than the inside dimension of the box it's going to go in. And the reason for that is because you need a 1/2 inch for each side for the drawer guides. So my inside dimension is 24.5 inches. My drawer box, the outside dimension of my drawer box is going to be 23.5 inches. And then I'm going to make it 12 inches, which is the exact size of my drawer guides. And I'm going to use 1x5 to make my drawer box, and then it's going to have an 1/8 inch plywood bottom. Sometimes when I need two boards the exact same size and I don't want to set up a stop block just for two boards, I'll cut the first board just a little bit past the line. I'll get them both flush in the back, and then I'll cut them on that first line that I made. So now if you look, these two boards are exactly the same size. So I did a dry fit for the drawer in here, and it's really tight. So I'm gonna take like a 1/16 off each side, and that should be good. See how tight it is? It's like me in a hula hoop. All right, let me do another test fit. See if that was enough. That should be good right there. For the drawer box itself, I did the two side pieces longer than the front and back pieces because you don't want it like this, because when you pull the drawer in and out, eventually it'll rip that screw out if you put a screw in here. It's better if you do it this way, especially if you're gonna do, I'm gonna do pocket holes, or if you're just gonna screw it in, you're much better doing this figuration, doing your side pieces, your full length. The two side boards are 12 inches, and these two are 22 inches. The front and back pieces are 22 inches. I'm gonna put my pocket holes into my front and back boards. I had to rearrange my garage for the 29th time today to get out my table saw, and now it looks like I'm dancing with it. So I'm using my table saw to cut a groove into each piece of my drawer box, all four sides. So I'm cutting the groove 3/8 of an inch from the inside bottom edge of each board. The groove's going to be probably a little bit thicker than 1/8 of an inch and then 1/4 of an inch deep. I set my fence 3/8 of an inch from the inside edge of my saw blade, and then I just raised up my saw blade 1/4 of an inch past the tabletop. Then I just moved my fence over a little bit so I can take a second pass on the piece and make the groove a little bit wider. Then I did a little test fit on my plywood, and it was still a little bit tight, so I'm just going to move it over maybe a 32nd, maybe a 16th, and just so it slides a little bit easier in there. Okay, so I took another willy hair off, and let's see how it slides. That looks pretty good to me. Before I assemble the drawer, I'm going to give it a quick sanding with my orbital sander at 150 grit with 150 grit sandpaper. I'm tired of sanding, so I ended up finishing these up on the Wen belt sander. It's much quicker. I did these in like 15 minutes, maybe 10. Sorry about the weird angle, but I don't want to rearrange my garage to build this drawer and then rearrange it again to cut the panel for the drawer. So I'm just going to do it on the side like this. Is there a rule you're not supposed to cross-cut plywood like this on the table saw? Because it feels a little sketchy. Once I got it close to the size, I was able to square it all up with a crosscut sled. Some complete idiot took my drawer guides out of the package and left them just sitting in the workshop to get sawdust all in them while he was cutting all kinds of crap in here. What an idiot this guy is. I don't want to mention any names and throw him under the bus, but he's an idiot. It was me! My first attempt was a bee's willy too big, so I just got to cut it down a little bit on my table saw and give it another try. And it was perfect. If anybody can see what I'm doing wrong here, I will give you $1,000,000 Jasco bucks. Just look at what I'm doing here and tell me what's wrong with this picture. I'm going to lose my woodworker's card over this one. I sped the tape up 4 times, but you can see how long it's taken me to realize what I did wrong. And then all of a sudden it hits me. I put glue on the wrong ends. I should have put it on these ends, and I put it on this end. But I'm wondering why I'm getting glue all over my hands as I put it together. Oh my gosh, dude. So I put the glue on the right part this time, and the rest of this went together without a hitch. Sometimes I like to hold my screw gun upside and yell out, "West Side!" Because the boys into wood are always hard. Get some glue on your project, grab your scraping card. Now that's a drawer. So to put on my drawer guides, I'm going to flip the drawer box upside down and do it from the bottom. And then I'm going to put my drawer guide on here, bring it up to the front. I want it almost even with the front. And then I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to mark where my screws are going to go. I'm going to pre-drill it, so I marked. I don't want to go any deeper than this because I don't want to go through the other side. So I'm just going to mark it with some tape. The wood spacer I'm using, I know I didn't mention in the video, but it's just a random piece of wood I had. It was like for packaging for something. It just happened to be a good size. I like to keep my drawer guides like a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch from the bottom of the drawer box, and this just fits perfectly. So that's why I use it. I got 8 screw guns, and none of them have a Phillips tip in them right now. Not one of them. I did the exact same thing on the opposite drawer guide, and then I put my drawer in because now it's time to attach that drawer guide to my drawer box. So now I pull the drawer guide out and I hold it back the same distance I held it back from the inside of the drawer carcass, which is about a 32nd of an inch, maybe a 16th of an inch. Then I marked the first 2 screw holes with a pencil. Then I pre-drilled the screw holes and installed the screws. And then obviously I repeated that process on the other side. And then once I got the first 2 screws in on both sides, I pulled the drawer out so I could put the last screw in on both sides. You should have a plastic clip on your drawer guide and you either push it down or up and it releases the drawer. Then I pre-drilled and installed my last screw on both sides of the drawer. Okay, so I need to attach this to the next layer down. My plan originally was to do it with pocket hole screws, that were gonna be hidden behind the drawer. But now, because I have the top on, I can't get a screw gun in here to put a pocket hole screw into this. So I have to put new pocket holes in the back of this and then screw it from the bottom up. So this is a 1x8 that's 26 inches long, and it's gonna hold the bottom shelf on. I'm attaching it to the bottom of the nightstand top with pocket hole screws. Now, if you were building this out of plywood, you could leave this piece solid and the top solid and the bottom shelf solid instead of piecing it together like I did. But you wouldn't be able to do the quarter round around the top or around the bottom shelf like I did. You'd have to leave it everything square, which is fine. I actually might build a second one out of plywood or a combination of wood and plywood. So now I'm attaching the shelf to this board that I just put on, and I'm using this 1x8 to support the front of the shelf while I screw it on the back. Now I messed up using this 1x8 to support this because this isn't how I wanted to attach the shelf to it. I wanted to attach the shelf like this, with the screw going through the back of the 1x8, so you had the shear strength of the screw holding the weight of the shelf. But instead I did it like this, which is an inferior method because the screw isn't as strong this way, if that makes any sense. But I think it'll be okay between the strength of the glue, and I'm using 3-inch screws. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I'm no engineer. So I'm going to use 5 3-inch screws in the bottom of this thing, and I wanted them to be spaced out somewhat nicely, not all willy-nilly, just all randomly in the thing, just to throw people off. They're like, this guy, his work looks like a hack, but look how evenly the screws are laid out. I like to use a punch to keep my drill bit from dancing on me, and then naturally I pre-drilled and countersunk all my screw holes. Now, I said I used 3-inch screws about 8 times while I was making this video, but now that I'm watching myself put in this screw, that's a 2-inch screw. It's not a 3-inch screw, so I use 2-inch screws. Right about here, I'm noticing that my screws are bulging out the wood underneath because I just used that little countersink bit and I didn't go in the whole 2 inches.
It's a weird thing to brag about.
So I pulled the screws back out and re-drilled them all with a longer drill bit. Then I put all the screws back in. Lesson learned. Look at here, look at here. Yeah, this isn't meant to support the weight of everything. It's going to be hung to the wall through the back. Look how quick I am, like a cat.
Wow, wow. Is he out of his whole damn mind?
I did a little bit of touch-up sanding before I was going to stain it, just in case there was any scratches or any glue or anything I missed. And I like to stain my furniture on a furniture dolly like this, so it's easy to just spin it around and get all the sides without having to touch it too much. I'm using Bare Provincial for this one. In my experience, woodworking can be very therapeutic, especially long tasks like sanding and staining. It's almost meditative. And I like to meditate on some of the tough questions in life, like, why does Target have all these fat people on their posters, but I can't get a shirt over 2X? Does that mean I'm fat enough to get a modeling job with them, but I'm too fat to shop at their store? Okay, so now I'm getting ready to do my top coat, but as you can see, I don't know if you could see it in the video, it's already starting to sag. I let it sit a couple days in here drying, and it's not meant to sit on the shelf like this. So I'm gonna use my clamp and use it as a spreader and spread this up a little bit to hold it while I'm clear coating it and keep it from sagging any more than it already is. If you don't know, some clamps have a button on them. You could push that button, take off one of the clamp sides, switch it to the back side of it, and now you can use the clamp as a spreader. I'm using this oil-based satin finish. I'm gonna use this brush that's made for polyurethane finishes because last time everybody said my foam brush was giving me bubbles, so I'm gonna give this one a try. Every time I use this oil-based polyurethane, I get a ton of bubbles, and I don't know why. So I'm gonna try to use a lot of the suggestions I got in my comments last time. Like one of them was to use a better brush because I used a foam brush the last time. And I always try to make sure I shake it up the best I can. I'm just kidding, this is paint. I know you're supposed to stir it slowly. I know I just made 1,000 woodworker beeholes clench simultaneously. All right, guys, can you see this finish? I'm not happy with it. I did the oil-based again, and it came out bubbly. I think my problem right now is this can I got from Walmart was old, and that's why it was on clearance, and it's really thick. Like, you see, like, some of these bubbles it's leaving? I'm gonna sand this down, thin down my clear coat, and redo it. All right, guys, I used this paint thinner. There's always something, right? I use this paint thinner that I picked up yesterday. It says thins oil-based paint, stains, and varnishes. I looked it up. It says you can use this in polyurethane, right? To thin it. But when I put it in, it looked like milk. And it thinned it, but it looks cloudy now. It's not clear. I'm afraid to put it on here. Has anybody ever used this stuff before? I'm gonna try it. Let me know in the comments what you think. If this messes it up, then I'm suing Clean Strip. No, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna try it. Cross your fingers. I don't know why my face looks like I'm pinching a loaf right here, but I just thought of a great way, an easy way to upgrade this thing and increase the value of it. You know, put your own spin on it like I'm always saying. I'll show you at the very end when I do the big reveal. Okay, so it doesn't look milky now. I'm going to let it dry a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't end up looking milky when it's dry. After I thinned it down and did a few coats, it looks a lot better. I don't know if you guys can see that in the camera. It's not perfect, but it's way better than it was. So now I got to attach my drawer face to my drawer box. I'm just going to put it on here. Lift up the drawer a little bit. Clamp it on. Then I'm going to pull the drawer box out. Then I'm pre-drilling it with my countersink bit and adding a couple screws. All right, guys, so this is my current end table situation. Look at the top of this thing. Looks like somebody was using it as a cutting board. So I just keep a book up here, my charger. I got my medications over here. And then in the drawers, all I do is I keep a couple snacks in this one in case I get hungry in the middle of the night. I like to pick at some chicken. Oh, maybe that's what that cutting marks are from. Anyways, and then in this drawer, I just have some clothes. But you can see I'm ready for an upgrade. So I'm gonna be the guinea pig on this one. And the first one I make is gonna go right here. So to hang this thing, I'm just gonna use my stud finder and find the studs in the wall. Then I'm gonna use my clamps as like a jack. Put my 2-foot level up there to make sure it's all level, so I can make little micro adjustments with my clamp. And as I jack the clamp up, you see it gets more and more level. Then I pre-drill it with my countersink bit, and I put in some 3-inch screws right into the studs. Then I double check it, and it is right on the money. Well, bam! What do you guys think? I think it came out really awesome. In the future, I may find a way to hide the cord, or maybe drill a hole through the top. The cord goes through the middle. Look how the drawer came out good. Look at this. Well, bam, look at that. You got your little shelf underneath, and I installed a surprise. I installed some under cabinet lighting as a night light. Look how cool that is. Even my cat likes it.